corporate capture of food systems is not new. It's been building up since the 1990s with the introduction of neoliberal policies, privatization, opening markets, withdrawing state support to agriculture in the global south, and of course with the WTO and the agreement on agriculture, which has food as a commodity for export rather than a human right.
Ces derniers 2 décennies, depuis 2007-2008, la crise alimentaire, les mouvements sociaux, la société civile s'est éveillée. Il a même introduit la FAO, il a introduit le comité. Et donc, il a organisé ce mécanisme actuel dont on parle. Et ça, de toute façon, on n'en veut pas. Les multinationales, les sociétés transnationales n'en veulent pas parce qu'elle est contre-force, contre-pouvoir. Et elles veulent affaiblir, stopper cette avance de ces mouvements sociaux. C'est ça, on comprend un peu ça. On sait très bien que nous sommes dans une situation où il faut organiser plus, où il faut parler entre nous plus. Et je répète toujours que si un continent, une région va faire beaucoup d'efforts, beaucoup plus que les autres, c'est l'Afrique qui devrait le faire.
It's important to underline that corporations would never have attained the degree of concentration and power they have without the complicity of government.
How is it that our governments can go against their own decisions, as exemplified by this so-called common position by the African Union regarding the Food Systems Summit? And this is one key concern that we are asking in our common letter to the states. Our feeling, as explained in the letter, is that there's a small group in the AU that is driving this action.
This position portrays a captured AU, tying our futures to the global economy based on extraction, ecocide, inequalities, and exploitation of our peoples and our resources.
The key actor in this movement has been the World Economic Forum, which groups the world's most powerful multinationals, along with philanthrocapitalist foundations like Gates. Its recipe for what it calls progress is simple: technological innovation, digitalization, investment, and a narrow concept of science-based knowledge that excludes the wisdom of peasants, women, indigenous peoples.
Eu sei. Yeah. Obrigada, Mateus. Temos visto com preocupação os nossos governos assinarem memorandos de entendimento, assinarem com companhias e vindo às nossas comunidades, devastando as nossas terras. Primeiro nos expulsam, tiram-nos das nossas terras, das nossas machambas, e nos colocam em zonas sem nenhuma condição de produção alimentar, muitas vezes zonas secas e sem água. Como jovens, nós estamos aqui a chamar a atenção aos nossos governos e queremos dizer isto aqui neste encontro, que nós negamos e denunciamos estes acordos e estes posicionamentos que os chefes de Estados africanos e os governos têm estado a fazer, porque primeiro não nos representam, nós não nos sentimos parte deste processo.
All small-scale food producers, including indigenous peoples, women, and workers, continue to be marginalized and excluded from decision-making processes in their countries. But what they call public participation by citizens, we actually call it cherry-picking participation by those invited by the government and corporations. It is through this system of cherry-picking participation that has sold our heritage, our land, our national resources, and our souls to corporations.
All right, should I get us started on the next panel? Hi, everybody. My name is Estefania. I use they, them pronouns, and I'm here to have the honor to facilitate the panel about what is sacred and protecting Indigenous food and the sea for food sovereignty. And we have three wonderful guests. Something to just, resonate with what's been shared so far. I feel very moved by a lot of what's been said today. And right now we have the opportunity in this panel to talk about the new frontier of the biotech industry, which we see as being the genetically modification of animals. And so, we've already seen the privatization of land and healthcare and seeds, and now what we see is the privatization of animals. And so, genetically engineered salmon has been is the first animal designed for human consumption, and three of our panelists here today have a lot to say about that. And so, also resonating a lot with the folks in Brazil. GE salmon was approved for sale in Brazil this year. And so that's one issue to pay attention to very closely, since there's a lot of happening in Brazil right now, and a lot of direct assault to Indigenous people's rights happening right now in the Amazon especially. I was creeped out by the king's words of investment in fruit production in that video that we saw. And I think, a lot of what we're going to speak today is to speak kind of on the other side of the commodification of food and really bring to life all these topics. And so I wanted to invite John briefly. Thank you so much for your music. John, you just played. I wanted to invite you just briefly to share a little bit about the BlockCorporateSalmon campaign, and then we'll just get started.
For sure. Yeah. Excited to be here in two capacities, in music and talking about this important campaign. So the BlockCorporateSalmon campaign is a fairly new campaign to a very long fight in one, protecting salmon, but also fighting against genetically engineered salmon, which shouldn't even be called salmon. It's just a frankenfish is how we refer to it. Yeah, and it's a fight we've joined in. Huge shout outs to Community Alliance for Global Justice. They've been working with several folks who see themselves as salmon people in uplifting this fight, and we're joining that energy. But also shout outs to all the Indigenous folks who've been resisting the colonialism, like corporate takeover of their land and their being, and we're just another chapter in this long fight. And what we've been doing, there's a company, Akubani, who's trying to make this frankenfish happen in the U.S., and we're just making sure that they know we won't let it happen. We've gotten hundreds of companies at this point to say that they're going to boycott frankenfish. We have tens of thousands of people who are saying that they boycott frankenfish, and if you and we're just trying to raise the energy to get more people knowing that that this could be happening if we don't resist it. And yeah, and I don't want to take away from our speakers today. I just want to shout out this campaign. Anyone and everyone can and should be a part of it. And we have I'm sure someone will be putting some links in the chat as to how you can sign up to get more involved. But all that aside, I want to pass it back to Stefania to introduce our speakers and have them be who you hear about as to why we all need to be joining this struggle.
Thank you so much, John. It's been wonderful to get to know a lot of folks through this campaign and work together. As a young person growing up in Ecuador, understanding these big international markets and how that impacted my country, my family, and my upbringing, influenced everything that I chose to do in my life afterwards. And a lot of this work to me now is healing the generational trauma my family and my body has been through as a result of these constant threats to our cultures that comes from the bigger economic, the economic dependency of these bigger colonial systems historically and throughout time. And so I have learned so much through this campaign myself, and felt so honored to learn from people, especially the folks here. And so I'll just introduce the panelists real quick. I'll introduce Carl first. Carl Wassile. I've gotten to know Carl over the last 2 years doing this. And Carl, you'll hear from him. He's a salmon person. He's Yupik, and I've gotten to hear a lot of his experience organizing against the fossil fuel industry throughout this time. Morgan, I've gotten to know you more recently, but Morgan organizes also with Uprooted and Rising, especially the campaign to protect Mauna Kea, which is a sacred mountain to Native Hawaiians that is being threatened right now by scientists essentially that want to build a 30-meter telescope on top of this mountain that would contaminate with mercury a lot of the rivers around. And so it's definitely a food sovereignty issue. Morgan is also organizing the film festival Poisoning Paradise, which is a documentary that everybody should watch. It has to do a lot to do with the fight against GE and pesticides. And Valerie, Valerie is a big voice in the fight against GE salmon. We've learned so much from you. The other day I was with someone that said that you're known as the native nutritionist. And I've learned a lot from that, actually, from videos on YouTube that you've made. It's been so lovely to feel inspired by your work to do this. Valerie is a native nutritionist and recently was the regional director for Native Food and Knowledge Systems in the Native American Agricultural Fund. And so I welcome you all. And with this first question, the name of this panel is Protecting the Sacred. And so the first question is just, can you tell us what that means to you? And we can start with Valerie and then Morgan, if you'd like to follow up with after Valerie, and Carl, you can close us out. So it's just the first question. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, and thank you everybody for joining. I am very encouraged by the amount of participants that are in here, and I'm getting texts from my sweet friend Buck. Hi Buck, saying hi. I was really trying to find my words about this question in particular this morning because it's so rich. You know, for Coast Salish people, my people, our foods are more than just resources and commodities. They are our relatives and our greatest teachers. And that means that, you know, for a Coast Salish person, when we are actively on the land, fishing our rivers and in pursuit of wild game and harvesting and collecting medicines with good intention and thought and prayer, we are being actively engaged in our traditional foodways, and that shapes our culture in so many ways. And it feeds us more than just, you know, my training is in nutrition, but which, you know, distills everything down into nutrients and biochemicals and, you know, numbers on a plate. But really, people, what I see happening more and more in our world these days, with so much polarization and so many, it's that polarization just seems to be getting stronger and stronger and stronger, that we have to find a way to get back to a crux of life. How do we get back to the center? And for us, that means being active on the landscape. That means getting our hands in the dirt and spending time with our teachers that are waiting for us just right outside the door, and who teach us every single day without even using a spoken word. I think about the teachings of the Salmon people and how they ceremoniously return to the rivers every single year, and how they've done this, you know, that this is their ancestral rivers, and they go out and have this awesome odyssey in the sea, collecting minerals and building their rich, nutrient-rich bodies, and then they return and they demonstrate for us what it means to be committed to life eternal, that they will bloody their heads against dams to get through. They will swim all the way up into the high mountain meadows to give their life for the next generation. And for Coast Salish people, we see that as an act of generosity and kindness and love and abundance for the future. And we ask ourselves how we also can live a life that rich. That is what it means to be a teacher, and to teach without a spoken word, by just animating that in your life. And so I feel like in the field of nutrition, we need to be fed in those ways. And in our language, which I'm not claiming to be a big language speaker. I'm working on that this year. We have a term called Kwiat Siaya, which means in English, it's hard to translate, but it's distilled down to something like sacred friendship. And that's what I think of when I think of our foods and our medicines and our healing system. And that when we really want to stand on the right side of our healing story, we become active advocates for those great teachers who don't have a voice in our world. So I'll shut up now.
Thank you so much, Valerie. That really struck me, the right side of our healing story. I find that especially with young people, you know, trying to find a place to fight, you know, I was born in a city. I didn't choose in a really busy city. And so now I have to reframe, you know, how I approach nature, how I approach, you know, things that weren't as accessible to me, and understand, you know, everything from that lens, and open up my learnings to the world. So thank you. Morgan, talking about young people, would you like to tell us what protecting the sacred means to you?
Yeah, out of respect to the elders on the panel, I was asking if Carl could speak before and then if that's fine. Yeah, I would just like to hear what Carl has to say.
Waka, can you hear me? Yeah. Okay, great. Would you like me to go next then, Morgan? Is that correct? Yeah, absolutely. First of all, my name, Angutagayak Angutak Mupik from the north, which is circumpolar Arctic is where I'm from. And currently I'm in Potawatomi territory on the freshwater coast here of Turtle Island, also known as North America. The freshwater coast is where I'm currently at. So I wanted to recognize I'm a traditional Potawatomi and Anishinaabe territories. So that's the first thing I wanted to share. You know, when we're talking about protecting the sacred, I want to make sure that I give time also for the translations. I think what Valerie said was critically important about reconnecting ourselves, because that's the basic power of Mother Earth. She's got the most creative force that connects us all to our relatives, and some of our relatives include the air, the moon, the stars, the sun, and all that exists between the center of where we're at, the center of Earth, and the center of the universe. We call that creative force in our language, Shamua. But that sacredness is all around us, as Valerie said too. And we don't have to use English language to explain that. we have a pretty old language, but so part of the reconnecting the sacred as is a healing process because of colonization. We were all born on this planet into this system of separation, not only from us from the land, but also that separation of our spiritual practices and our medicines. And so reconnecting to those is a powerful force, connects us to the powerful forces of Mother Earth, of nature. And so when we're looking at what I do personally is on a consistent basis to challenge some of these large forces that like say these companies, but it's all part of a system. So reconnecting to the land is the most powerful thing. So I'm going circular to the final question, but it connects to the first question. What is it sacred? So that's what I would like to say. And yeah, bless you. Thank you, elders. Thank you for listening in. And yeah, we've got a lot of healing to do. And in that process, let's do it together. So that's what's sacred to me. Thank you. Go ahead, Morgan.
Wesley, thank you for that. Nut Diponi Hopi Yan Matua, Nut Morgan Tamichi Pahan Matua, Nut Bat Nut Wungwa, Nut Lasang Nov Mana, Ina Terry Dennis, Itana Michael Tamichi, Nakwang Pelongwa. Good. I just want to introduce myself in my native tongue. I am, like Valerie, reclaiming my ancestral language. And so Nakwang Talongwa means beautiful, the sun is rising beautifully. And my Hopi name was given to me as Sacred Bundle. And my English name is Morgan Tamichi. I am from the Pumpkin Clan, from Masungnavi, which is which is at Hopi, which Hopi is located in northern Arizona. My mother is Terry Dennis, and my father is the late Michael Tamichi. I'm calling from, I'm an uninvited guest right now. I'm calling in from Lishan Ohlone territory, which is also known as San Francisco, California. And I'm very honored to be speaking alongside you both, Carl and Valerie. I just want to mention that. Protecting the sacred to me are part of my sacred instructions that have been passed on to me by my soul, which means grandmother in Hopi. And that is, we are stewards of the land. And so what does that mean? You know, as a Hopi woman existing in 2021, this has been like a lifelong battle for myself, but it's a part of the healing, right? The collective healing that needs to be done. For me, it means finding the balance of surviving in today's world and living in accordance with our ceremonial calendar. You know, they are this sacred are the prayers and the songs and the stories, the dances and ceremonies we do to live in harmony with the world around us and beyond. Sacred is what connects me to the past and everything my ancestors did for me to be here to speak right now, while also connecting me to the future generations by continuing to sing the songs of creation and moving with the next 7 generations in mind. You know, defending the sacred is what brought me to begin organizing with the UC Davis TMT campaign. You know, they're working to end the University of California's involvement in the construction of a 30-meter telescope that is planned to be built on the most sacred mountain to Native Hawaiians. An elder of mine and I were made aware of this atrocity when we saw news of 30 kapuna, which in Native Hawaiian means elder, were arrested on Mauna Kea for peacefully protecting their sacred aina from further desecration by construction, which was all done without the consent of Native Hawaiians, you know. I understood the sacredness of this mauna as I remember as a little girl, my soul taking me up to San Francisco peaks in northern Arizona to protect what was sacred to not only our tribe, but to many other tribes throughout Arizona. You know, and because of what happened at San Francisco peaks is what really pushed me to, stand with my relatives out at Mauna Kea, because greed and power over humanity, time and time again, it just it hurts us. And yeah, I'll end there. I'll end there.
Thank you so much for sharing, Morgan. Morgan has been coming to some of our meetings for Black Corporate Salmon, and it's been really inspiring to see your energy and to work on this festival together with you. So keep posted, because Morgan is doing some good work. So I wanted to ask y'all the second question, which is essentially, this whole counter summit is happening because of the corporate takeover of the UN Food Systems Summit. And, plainly put, is just this summit that the UN is hosting is essentially a gathering of corporations that are trying to decide a lot of things for a lot of us around the world. And so the question is, how do you see this play out? The corporate takeover of our food systems where you live or in your region, and feel free to include your reaction to genetically engineered salmon in that. But where do you see this in your own experience? And we can maybe go around the same order: Valerie, Carl, and Morgan.
The first thing that came to mind, and I've been thinking about this question for a while, but today, for some reason, just now, was really thinking about what happened to our food supply chain, which was nearly catastrophized last year. And it really didn't matter if you were what socioeconomic status you were. You went to the grocery store and basic staples weren't there. And it was really, I think, a wake-up call in the moment for everyone to not be able to go get their favorite cut of meat at the local Fred Meyer's or whatever is your supermarket. And suddenly all of my food systems colleagues and friends became essential workers. We were all trying to figure out how to get food to people. I was at the time working with some of the Navajo chapters across all 4 states who were grantees for the organization I used to work for. And I would hear the shrill in their voices around, trying to get basic staples into their households, driving 3 hours one way to find bare shells. And then going back home in that same amount of time and returning the next day to do it. And often along the way, finding out that they'd been laid off from their only jobs. So we have a real issue in this country. And the most, I guess, sort of frustrating piece of it to me is that we continue to move towards a system that is actually very fragile and doesn't adequately, doesn't provide a life for people to live a life of dignity, I guess, is what I'm trying to get to. And that Native people, the first people of this land, have had vast trading systems and food systems routes for a millennia, since time began. They are intricate. They trade, people in my territory would go to the east side of the mountains just because they had a hankering for wind-dried salmon. Their taste buds are so refined, they could tell you the exact stream or a fish was harvested from, or the landscape where a certain wild game might have been harvested from. So to know a food system that well is so incredibly rich. It's just this untapped potential that we have answers, to the needs of infrastructure and food supply chains in this country, but time and time again are not invited to inside the country club to be able to share our knowledge. And so people this time are really, I think, transitioning into a time where we all see that need to fill that space and to share what we know, because we have answers. But anyways, this is, genetically engineered salmon is just another example of discrediting traditional ecological knowledge the intellectual property and cultural property of Native people. And we don't even really like to consider it property because, as I said in the answer to the first question, these are our relatives and our greatest teachers, but somebody's got to, also be a good friend. And that's where we see ourselves in the system. But it's just this like long history, embedded American cultural patterns to discredit the depth of knowledge and wisdom that Native people hold, which is too, honestly, if we aren't part of the solution, it will continue to be detrimental to the future. And that is what, I think outside of ourselves, we really truly care about, and why we are showing up to spaces like this, for just one example. So, Carl, sorry, I feel like I'm rambling today. I need some warrior tea.
No, you're great. Thank you so much for everything you shared. I think the response during COVID really brought out who are the essential workers, what is essential in a time like this. I think in my community, a lot of us queers, people of color, were the ones to respond to the emergencies in our community. And that actually, it just brought out, who was already working on things before, who was responding to their communities, and then this is an opportunity for people to join and see what the most essential things of life are, and food is paramount to that. And so thank you so much for sharing that. It's very 2021 context of how we respond to our communities and connect the dots there. Carl, go ahead.
So I think that Valerie covered it pretty well. Within the global context, it's from an indigenous perspective, most of the Earth's biodiversity that's left, that is in the hands of indigenous peoples that haven't been subjected to this monolithic types of agriculture that are perpetuating genocide with the ecocide. So the traditional agricultural practices of indigenous peoples are holistic. We don't separate one species from another. And so when we're talking about salmon or salmon people, it encompasses the entire northern hemisphere. There's only a few places left that are under indigenous occupation that where that culture continues to protect and provide for not only the region but now the whole world. And there's some challenges because of the legal and colonial system and the neo-colonial food systems are so invasive that it's actually causing one of the root causes of climate change. So when we're looking at melting sea ice and massive fishing fleets, as well as pollution from agro businesses on this whole planet, so on every single continent is suffering as the result of these food systems, inequalities, and human rights abuses. The ones most assaulted are women, children, but also indigenous peoples of color, and those most vulnerable, disabled, as trans, people that don't fit within the colonial mode of control and power. So as a response, taking back our power is the power of the people, and also recognizing that agroecology and the agroforestry, which is kind of Western way of talking about traditional practices, indigenous practices that are essential for our survival, but also restorative to the planet. The roots in the soil can collect as much carbon in a biodiverse system. So indigenous peoples do hold the most creative forces at this time to be able to protect our families and our systems. So family systems, from my perspective, are not always just about people and humans, but it includes the birds, animals, even the fungus underneath in the soil. So this attack is affecting us all. And I wanted to just give a shout out to also to folks on other continents that might be tuning in. I know that we're in a virtual system, and so it's difficult to relay. And I also wanted to recognize our translators. So thank you very much. But we're in solidarity. Viva people's power. Viva the power of people. Yeah, thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Carl. Yes, to solidarity across the globe. I feel very seen by this event because it is, it's putting a lot of what I lived in my home country in the context of what we're doing here. I appreciate your comments, Carl. Morgan, would you like to tell us how you see the corporate takeover play out where you are?
Yeah, thank you for that, Carl. So a part of my current position with UNR is to raise awareness of this very issue. And at the same time, just like Carl mentioned, remind the people that we have the power to change these systems with our power of choice. I like to tell, my sacred circle, like educate to eradicate, like free yourselves from this conditioning, the system that we're conditioned to, live in. Because at the end of the day, nature will survive with and without us. And so it comes back to our relationship with the land. I think, Valerie and Carl both spoke on, there's this like division, this separateness that we're born into. And, it just, the division and the separateness, you could see it in relationships to our food systems. We don't have there's a lack of reciprocity. Reciprocity, in my opinion, it creates intention. Intent when you're going to go and pick your food or grow your food. You want to have a good heart. You want to have a good mind. Something that was taught to me early on by my father, he would take us to the field. I grew up off the reservation as well, and the Hopi reservation, the Hopi land. And but any chance my father could get, he would take us out to Hopi, like during the summers, and just plant. And Hopis are known to be dry farmers, and we plant corn to survive. And when we're planting, he tells us, these are, when we put the seeds in, to like have a good heart, and so that, we have food to feed the people and nourish us beyond, beyond this harvesting season. And also my uncles and my soul, like they tell me, the corn are our children. And so we have to take care of the corn, right? We have to take care of our children, because just as Mother Earth sustains us, from when we're brought into this world, some indigenous cultures bury the umbilical cord with Mother Earth. It's this reciprocity that's been lost in translation. And I just wanted to share that specifically with the work that I'm helping I'm helping to coordinate a virtual film festival featuring Poisoning Paradise. And I just wanted to add a little context to the film and how it aims to reveal how corporate interest is in opposition to people and the land's interest. This is actually a little excerpt, a little synopsis of the film from the website itself. It's in an attempt to diversify an economy that was overly reliant on tourism. Policymakers in both Hawaii and Washington, D.C. encouraged the world's largest biotech companies to utilize Kauai's favorable climate and fertile soil to test genetically engineered seeds and crops. Corporations including Syngenta, Pioneer DuPont, and Dow AgroSciences have since applied hundreds of tons of restricted use pesticides on thousands of acres across Garden Island's west side, the traditional homeland of an indigenous and disenfranchised population. It goes on to say that as champions of a grassroots movement to make Kauai County Bill 2491 law, local activists battle political corruption, corporate bullying, and systematic concealment by the agrochemical industry. In this film, which I encourage, I invite you to join us in this virtual film festival. You'll see a scene where it's clear that, these chemicals are hurting the people in the land. And just like Carl said, the most marginalized women, children are being, they reap all of these, harms. And just by living next to these next to these testing fields. And so there's a scene in this film where it clearly shows that, these multi-billionaire like agrochemical, companies are in politicians' pockets essentially, and it's clear when communities organize together and they take the democratic approach, the democratic legislative approach of like, oh, we got to, organize together and get all of these policymakers because we voted for them to represent us. It's not reflective, and you see it with the UN, unfortunately. So yeah, I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Morgan, for describing all of that and describing the food system of your people. So I think now we're gonna just start wrapping up. And the question to wrap up is just, what is something that you hope that people listening in today would take away from today? And where can people follow your work? Feel free to include any shout outs you want that you haven't gotten a chance to include yet. I'll say one thing that I left in almost the taste in my mouth was your description, Valerie, of like traditional, the refined taste that comes from tradition, really understanding your food system, I think is what you said. That really struck me and stayed with me. What about you all? And maybe we can go the opposite way this time and have Valerie close us out. So Morgan, Carl, and Valerie. So just what you're hoping people take away and where to find your work.
Yeah, so I want to share this prayer for people to take away. And a little bit of context to this prayer, it's actually a Hopi prayer for peace that Hopi elders tried to deliver to the United Nations in 1978. And, they had gone multiple times to the United Nations to try and warn them, like, if, look, like, we got to take care of the land, we got to do better, like, we got to be in better relationship to each other. And they were just trying to relay the Hopi prophecy to the United Nations, to the world leaders. And the door was never open to, to my Hopi elders. And so I want to share their prayer now. And I'm really grateful to have this opportunity too. So It's a Hopi prayer for peace, and it's translated in English, so bear with me. And I'm grabbing this from where I found the source, which I can link in the comments to watch the full video of how I learned about this. So a Hopi prayer for peace, great spirit and all unseen. This day we pray and ask you for guidance. Humbly, we ask you to help us and fellow men to have recourse to peaceful ways of life because of uncontrolled deceitfulness by humankind. Help us all to love, not hate one another. We ask you, excuse me, we ask you to be seen in an image of love and peace. Let us be seen in beauty, the colors of the rainbows. We respect our mother, the planet, and our cornfields. With our loving care, from her breast, we receive our nourishment. Let us not listen to the voices of the two-hearted, the destroyers of mind, the haters of self-made leaders, whose lust for power and wealth will lead us into confusion and darkness. Seek visions always of world beauty, not violence, not battlefields. It is our duty to pray always for harmony between man and earth, so that the earth will bloom once more. Let us show our emblem of love and goodwill for all life and land. Pray for the house of glass, which we refer to as the United Nations. Pray for within it our minds clear and pure as ice and mountain streams. Pray for the great leaders of nations in the house of Micah who, in their own quiet ways, help the earth in balance. Together with all nations, we hold this world in balance. This is from the Hopi elders of Hopewell, village of Hopewell. And yeah, I'll stop there. Thank you everyone for having me and joining me.
Thank you, Morgan. It was a very powerful prayer. Thank you for sharing that. I can feel it still in my heart. And I want everybody to reflect on what they're feeling right now, because I think that prayer is very powerful, especially on the directive of the elders upon the United Nations to transform their ways. And I in that same context, I also, want to recognize our elders that have passed before us. One of my great grandmothers, I call her Auntie Rita because of our Yupik traditions, and she was part of a delegation about a decade ago that went to the Vatican with 13 other grandmothers, including from around the world. These are indigenous grandmothers that were going to the Vatican to challenge the papal bulls, like the doctrine of discovery. So I know that there's somebody from Italia said that. Hello, but that's important to recognize also our elders in this fight and those that have passed before us to give us that strength. And so I know that the takeaways are to continue to reconnect to our traditional ways as indigenous peoples, but also to continue those values of sharing and it's a challenge because we have these corporate systems that are so invasive. So those prayers are really important. And thank you for sharing that, Morgan. I think that just for folks reflecting, I appreciate that. I definitely would want to acknowledge the emotions that also came out of me, and honoring our elders and thank you for that. I wanted to also, the other takeaway is not just the individual connection to the land and our ancestors and the spirits around us, but it's that those that are conscious and making conscious and those that are aware continue gathering together, and in that strength we can overcome these other powerful forces that are preventing us from moving from accessing the land, our spiritual ways with the plants and animals and the skies. I mean, our atmosphere is also important because of what's happening with the colonization of the atmosphere. So in this technology that is in the fight on technology, let's also work together for sovereignty of the air between where we walk on this earth to the moon. There's millions of pieces of pieces of satellites. So satellites are important. Thank you. And that's what I wanted to say. So I think that, you know, we've got the power of the people and continue this beautiful work that everybody's doing to challenge the corporate powers. Go ahead, Valerie. Thank you.
Thank you for Morgan. What a beautiful prayer. I really appreciate that today. I needed those words to fuel and really center the work and why we're here. It's a good reminder to, you know, I think we've talked a lot about, I've heard beautiful things from Carl and Morgan as well. Carl, the holistic knowledge quotes are incredible. I was trying to write them down to make sure I could be really succinct. And Morgan, educate to eradicate. How beautiful is that? Those are some takeaways I'm taking with me today. And also just feel a real strong need to remind everybody, you know, I think the people who are sort of attracted to this kind of work have so much fire and heart-centered intention around addressing these issues, which is beautiful and so needed. And also to remember to take care of yourself, you know. I think we can burn out really fast and make ourselves you're burning the candle at both ends, and that just leads you quicker into disease. I was, you know, really several years ago learned about adverse childhood experiences and you know, trying to think of my own children, and started going down the rabbit hole of things like epigenetics and how when the environment changes, our genetics changes. And also that's not just like a prescription to hold. It's our opportunity to remember that we have a need to advocate for these things, and also demonstrate for our next generation how to manage stress and take care of ourselves so that they have a true chance at decreasing incidences of diabetes and heart disease and cancers and all the things that are global health issues. And so I really wanted to, you know, to say I'm so inspired by being in this space with so many people today who are all carrying that torch. But I also want everyone to remember to take good care of themselves and operate always from a place of love, that when we're too stuck in the past and too stuck in the future and not really celebrating and acknowledging the moment of now, we're missing the opportunity to be mindful and have reciprocal relationships with the world around us. And so be kind to yourself and practice some gratitude so we can all also feel a balance between all the things that are wrong in the world and then all the things that are right, that we are doing right. And so I love you all, and take good care of yourself. You're precious and you're worth it. Thank you.
Thank you so much to all three of you. What an honor to have this conversation with you all. Thank you, Valerie, for that reminder. I think definitely the pandemic has put, you know, a lot of our personal relationships at the center. And so that hits home for me as well. Thank you all so much. One shout out that I wanted to give out is taking this opportunity to invite everybody here to support the Black Corporate Salmon campaign. One action that you can take is, John, if you can help me with the link on the chat. We would love to hear from you. It's a very easy form that we made, but it's a form that we're passing out to collect either pictures or videos of people in support of the boycott, in support of wild salmon and wild salmon cultures and salmon people, and in opposition to GE salmon. And so the link that John posted on the chat is the link. Please fill it out. You heard this whole story. We would love to hear what you thought and get your support. And please pass it around. We'll be, putting out some graphics later, but we hope this would be an opportunity to engage all of you all here. So I'll pass it back to John now so that he can introduce Denisa, who's going to talk about the native seeds legislation. Thank you all so much.
All right, everyone. Yeah, thank you so much to everyone who just spoke. And I hope that energy from that past panel helps you resonate with Denisa and what she's going to share about the Native Seeds Protection Act and why we need to be rallying behind it to help support this legislation. So I'll say Denisa Livingston is incredible person. She is a Diné community health advocate and an unapologetic food justice organizer, heirloom food grower, and Ashoka Fellow. And also the Slow Food International Indigenous Counselor of the Global North. And I'll let Denisa take it away from there and share about the Native Seeds Protection Act.
John, and to all my relatives, friends, guests, leaders, excellencies, thank you for being here. I just like to greet everyone in the Diné language, in my Diné language. Yat she Denisa Livingston she Kilachini Nashan Dana Ebashin, Ose Dana Tachini Dashate, Donanish Tachini Dashanella. I see that Nasha Tedagon will yet the Aquata the Anishila. I'm here in my homelands of Dinetka in New Mexico. I am from the Red House People Clan, and I'm just really excited that we have this space, this counter event, the day that we've been all looking forward to and working towards for how many years, and we're here to this day. And it's my ancestors that sit here and your ancestors that sit here that we gather together, and we're coming to speak about reconciliation and reparation and restoration and collective protection, collective continuance of the work that we're going, moving towards. And so I really thank everybody. For the past year, I was serving as the appointed champion of the United Nations Food Systems Summit, and it's been quite a work. And I really just want to point out, as we try to intervene and intercede and hold dialogues and hold spaces to bring truth, to what we're all speaking about, what we have all been contributing this day in your territories, for your nations, for your villages. And the thing that really pulls us together is that collective work. And one of the things that we've been working on Turtle Island is the Native American Seeds Protection Act of 2019. I think we need to revive this movement. We need to get behind this and really strategize about how to move this forward and put it as a priority, because our seeds and traditional foods need to be protected for not just now, not for the solutions, that we're trying to emphasize and implement, but also for the future generations, protecting our heritage, addressing the history, protecting those indigenous seed varieties, and also our sacred food. It is something that's very important for us because it also is a way to exercise our inherent sovereignty. And so for us to come together, as we've been working for nearly 2 years towards this day, and although I didn't didn't attend the summit, and I've been here, attending this counter event as a champion, I should say, that I'm so eager and so glad that we have mobilized, our Indigenous youth, the women, the elders to engage and to contribute. It's so important that we bring, all of the proposed solutions, continue it. Whatever happens this day, whatever goes on, we're still going to continue the work. We still need to come together to be able to do that. And with this act, this bill in Turtle Island, it's really, putting forth, ancestral justice, that our ancestors and those that have gone before us have laid out the work for us, and that we need to push these things, these protections. And so as we think about, us as Indigenous people and transforming the world's dominant food systems, it's important for us to know how we have been negatively impacted by them, by sharing our narratives, knowing that we need to put lived experiences as expertise, as the forefront. And, as industrialized food systems are #1 cause of deforestation, that they're the main drivers of global climate change and biodiversity loss and erosion of topsoil and many more issues, right? As we face this, we also need to know that our people have been displaced. Our people, need to be empowered, and we need to learn how to empower ourselves to organize better. And as organizers, our climate change is to organize better so that our territories and our villages and our nations, will be free of the destruction, but improved in liveliness and livelihoods and protection of our identity, and to prevent the theft of our lands and natural resources and the gross violation of human rights. So for us, it's an issue of life and death. And so as I come to speak, just a few words to many of our relatives here, to continue to encourage us, that as Indigenous peoples, we're committed to sustaining our food systems, continuing to safeguard our territories and resources, ensuring that our knowledge systems continue to evolve and be transmitted to future generations. So let's respect the agency and the autonomy of Indigenous peoples and our nations and communities. Let's look at the polycentricity of why we need to integrate interculturality from all of us as diverse people, to be able to create the solutions and hold a space like this and many more platforms to come. I just like to thank everybody as we advocate towards the community role of an equitable and also empowering food system, that we need to know that, we need to reprogram our tongue for liberation. We need to reprogram our menus. We need to reprogram our palates. We need to reprogram our tongues for liberation, and know that gastronomy and taste education is so important in the work forward. So as I speak on behalf of many of our people and our relatives, I just really like to thank those that have been at the forefront with us as champions and getting our voice out there and our voices heard. And today, that as we had some of our relatives present at the summit, the Global Hub on Indigenous Food Systems, Indigenous people's food system, our elders that are involved in there from all around the world, the 7 sociocultural regions, the UN Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues, our relatives that serve there, the Global Indigenous Youth Caucus, Slow Food Turtle Island Association, Slow Food USA, One Fish Foundation, and NAMA, speaking to our allies, but also moving from allies to accomplices, to co-resistors. It's knowing, our roles for the transmission of the work forward, to be a resistor, to be that good ancestor. Just thank you, everyone, to address the nutritional trauma that we all face through the COVID pandemic. And speaking to that, Ian Bijol, which is the unhealthy food in our communities that we need to raise awareness about too. And that's the word in Dinek, because we didn't have those words in our language for unhealthy food because it wasn't a part of who we were, right? So just my last word is that as we build momentum to increase our relational intelligence, to increase social gastronomy, to increase the collective protection, to increase, our stewardship. In Diné, we say, let's live a long life. Shana dane glingo as Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much for that, Denise. So much packed into such a short time. And yeah, so that it wraps up the Protecting the Sacred panel. And I want to pass it to Sal and the facilitators to transition us to the next and final portion of this afternoon.